A prominent Republican is breaking ranks in a way that Donald Trump is not used to seeing from inside his own party, and the fallout from these unusually blunt comments is already putting Trump on the defensive. I'll walk you through what was said, why it matters, and what it could mean for 2024 coming up next. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our coverage on the effort to hold Donald Trump accountable and to understand what's really happening inside the Republican Party. The Republican in question isn't some fringe backbencher or anonymous staffer. He's someone who has lived inside the GOP machine, knows how it works, and has seen firsthand how Trump operates behind closed doors. And that's what makes his comments so damaging for Trump, because they confirm from the inside what a lot of Americans already suspected. Let's start with what he actually said, and then we'll talk about what it tells us about Trump's standing inside his own party and the larger stakes if Trump makes it back to the White House. In a recent interview, this longtime GOP insider described Trump as, quote, a political and legal liability, warning that Republicans are tying themselves to a man who cares more about his own survival than about the country or the party. Now, that might sound like something you'd hear from a Democrat on cable news, but this is coming from a Republican who has worked with Trump's team, knows the donors, knows the operatives, and has watched how decisions are made. He went further, saying that many elected Republicans are terrified of publicly crossing Trump, even when they believe he's wrong, because they fear the backlash from his base, primary challengers, and the right-wing media ecosystem. According to him, a lot of the public displays of loyalty are, in his words, performative, a show put on to avoid being targeted. And that's the core of his warning, that an entire political party has reshaped itself around the emotional needs and legal problems of one man. Now, Trump doesn't let this kind of criticism go unanswered. We've seen this pattern for years. Anyone who breaks with him, no matter how loyal they once were, suddenly becomes a loser, a reno, or disgruntled. Behind the scenes, according to multiple reports, Trump allies are furious about these comments because they come at a delicate moment, as he juggles multiple criminal cases, appeals, and mounting legal bills, all while trying to sell himself as the inevitable Republican nominee and a strongman who cannot be beaten. Publicly, Trump has tried to brush off internal criticism as jealousy or betrayal. That's his usual script. But what makes these remarks from a GOP insider different is that they focus less on flattery or hurt feelings and more on cold political risk. He's not just saying Trump is mean or chaotic. He's saying Trump is a threat to the party's long-term survival and to the basic idea that no one is above the law. He pointed to Trump's legal strategy. The constant delays, the sweeping claims of immunity, the efforts to undermine prosecutors and judges, and said this isn't how an innocent person behaves, and it isn't how a responsible leader acts. He argued that Republicans are getting dragged into Trump's personal legal mess, forced to repeat talking points minimizing serious charges that they would never excuse if the defendant's name were anything other than Donald Trump. And that's where Trump's defensiveness really kicks in. Because the more detailed and credible these criticisms become, especially when they come from people who once supported him, the harder it is for Trump to dismiss them as fake news or a partisan witch hunt. Think about the broader pattern. Over the last few years, we've seen a steady trickle, and in some cases a flood, of Republicans who worked with Trump come forward with stories that paint a very troubling picture. Efforts to overturn an election, pressure campaigns on state officials, demands for personal loyalty over constitutional duty, and a constant obsession with grievances and score settling. This new round of comments fits into that pattern, but with a twist. The insider isn't just recounting past behavior. He's warning about what's coming if Trump returns to power. He described a second Trump term as likely even more extreme and less constrained than the first, because Trump has learned exactly which levers to pull, who will bend, and how far he can push without immediate consequences. And he made the point that Trump's anger about his legal exposure isn't going away. It's fueling his campaign. According to this Republican, Trump's focus isn't on policy or governing. It's on revenge, retribution, and self-preservation. And the people around him know that. They're not planning a normal administration. They're planning a pressure campaign against the institutions that held the line last time. The courts, the Justice Department, the civil service, and any Republican who doesn't fall in line. So why does a comment like this matter? Because it exposes the gap between what many Republican officials say in public and what they admit in private. Publicly, they echo Trump's lines about witch hunts and weaponization. Privately, many of them, as this insider suggests, are deeply worried, not just about losing elections, but about what it means to let one man's personal legal problems define an entire movement. He also highlighted a point that doesn't get enough attention: money. Trump's legal bills are enormous. He has been using political donations, money given by supporters who think they're funding a movement, to pay for his lawyers and legal defenses. That means Republican donors, small and large, are effectively subsidizing one man's court battles, and that, according to this GOP insider, is creating serious tension behind the scenes. Some donors are uncomfortable, some operatives are frustrated, some potential candidates are standing down rather than challenge him because they don't want to walk into the buzzsaw of Trump's anger and the online mob he can unleash. He warned that this is not sustainable. A party cannot function indefinitely as a legal defense fund for one individual. Now, to be clear and responsible, we should note that Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty in all of his criminal cases. He denies wrongdoing, he insists the charges are politically motivated, and he continues to argue that he's being targeted because of his position and his influence. But there's a difference between stating Trump's legal position and ignoring the basic facts. Multiple grand juries in multiple jurisdictions have approved indictments. Judges appointed by both parties have rejected some of his arguments, and a growing list of Republicans with first-hand knowledge of his behavior are going on the record, under oath or on camera, describing what they saw. That's the reality that puts Trump on the defensive. Not just the criminal charges themselves, but the credibility of the people who are starting to publicly distance themselves from him. And there's another layer here. The GOP insider stressed that there will be a reckoning, not just for Trump, but for the people and institutions that enabled him. He said in a few years, voters in history will be asking very simple questions. Where were you when it was clear what was happening? Did you speak up or did you stay silent because you were afraid of a tweet or a primary challenge? Did you defend the rule of law or did you help tear it down for one man? He argued that a lot of the loudest voices on the right, politicians, cable hosts, online influencers, are making bets right now. They're betting that Trump either wins and rewards them, or at least remains powerful enough that they can't afford to cross him, and they're hoping no one will remember what they said if the tide turns. But people do remember. Video lives forever, statements live forever, votes live forever, and as this Republican pointed out, there's a long list of officials, aides, and insiders who went along with Trump's most extreme demands, right up until they didn't. Only then did some of them find their conscience. The message he's sending is that the time to show courage is before the damage is done, not after, when it's convenient and book deals are on the table. So where does this leave Trump? He still dominates Republican primary polling. He still has a passionate, loyal base. He still has enormous influence over the party's media ecosystem and donor network. None of that has disappeared. But each time a Republican with actual inside knowledge steps forward and says, "This is dangerous," it chips away at the illusion that this is just partisan noise. It becomes harder to pretend that every criticism is coming from the radical left when it's Republicans with long conservative credentials doing the talking. And that's why you see the defensiveness, the angry statements, the name-calling, the attempts to discredit anyone who breaks ranks, because Trump understands something very clearly. If enough people inside the tent start telling the truth about what they've seen, his grip on the party becomes a little less absolute. The stakes here go far beyond one election cycle or one politician's career. They go to the question of whether a major political party in the United States is willing or able to free itself from the control of a single, deeply compromised figure. And that, in the end, is what this GOP insider is warning about. He's not asking Republicans to become Democrats. He's not asking conservatives to abandon their beliefs. He's asking them to recognize that no principle, no policy goal, no tax cut, no judge is worth surrendering the basic idea that the law applies to everyone, even the most powerful, even the loudest, even the man at the top of your own ticket. So the question isn't just what Donald Trump will do next. We know his playbook: attack, deny, deflect, demand loyalty. The real question is what the rest of the Republican Party will do. Will they continue to treat one man's legal problems as their top priority, or will more insiders find the courage to speak as bluntly as this one has and finally say, "Enough"? We'll be watching very closely to see which way they choose and what it means for the rest of us. If you found this breakdown useful, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who's trying to make sense of what's happening inside the GOP right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.